You begin outside Athens, in the quiet dark of 508 BSE sky, where the night air is cool against your skin and the land lies still beneath a wide and patient sky. There is no marble glow here, no grand city of bright columns as later ages will imagine. The Athens before you is older, plainer, and more human in scale, a city of earth and stone and timber, of narrow ways and uneven ground, of shrines and crossings and houses gathered close behind simple walls. You do not need to hurry. You walk slowly toward the sleeping city, and the road beneath your feet is firm with packed dust, worn by carts, sandals, hooves, and years of returning. Somewhere in the darkness, a dog stirs. Somewhere farther off beyond sight, there is the faintest sound of an animal shifting in its rest. The wind moves lightly over the ground, carrying with it the scent of dry earth, old smoke, and the fading warmth of the day now gone. Above you, the stars are clear. Before you, Athens waits. This is a city standing at the edge of change, though it does not yet know the full shape of what is coming. The old tyranny has fallen into memory, but no new certainty has taken its place. Noble families still weigh one another in silence and in speech. Sacred places keep their stillness. Public spaces remember the noise of argument, even when the night has quieted them. And yet none of that needs to trouble your steps. Tonight, you are only walking. You are entering Athens not as a soldier, not as a magistrate, not as an orator with a cause to press before the people, but as a quiet observer, moving at the gentlest pace through a city that history will one day remember more clearly than it remembers itself. For now, it is enough to be here. It is enough to feel the cool air. It is enough to hear the silence between distant sounds. It is enough to know that this city, still dark beneath the stars, is not yet the Athens of marble memory, but something older, softer, and closer, a place still becoming what it will be. So you let your breathing slow. You let the road lead you forward, and in the calm night of archaic Attica, you begin your walk. As you continue toward the city, you carry with you the quiet sense that Athens is living through one of those rare moments when the future has not yet chosen its form. Not long before this night, the rule of the Pisistrati tyrants came to an end. Their power, which had shaped the city for years, has already begun to pass into memory, though memory is never simple. And the traces of old rulers do not vanish all at once. A city remembers in stones and roads, in habits, in the places where people gather, and in the fears they do not speak aloud. Now the old order has loosened, but nothing fully settled has replaced it. Power still moves through great families, through names that carry weight, through loyalties older than laws. Among those who stand nearest the center of events are Cleisthenes and Agoras, men of standing, men of ambition, men whose choices may help decide what kind of city Athens will become. Their names drift through conversation, through rumor, through guarded discussion in doorways and courtyards, and through the open spaces where citizens listen more carefully than they speak. But tonight, you do not need to untangle every rivalry. It is enough to understand that the city is poised between older forms of rule and a wider, newer idea, one not yet fully born, in which more of its citizens may come to matter in public life. The democracy later centuries will praise is not yet here in its familiar shape. It exists, if at all, only as a possibility, like the first paling of the sky long before dawn. That is what makes this hour so quiet and so important. Athens does not yet know itself as history will know it. It is still a place of uncertainty, of noble pride, of sacred custom, of restless public talk, and of a people who may soon begin to imagine that the city belongs to them in a different way. You walk on through the night with that thought beside you, gentle and unhurried, as though the whole city were breathing in its sleep, waiting to discover what it will become. Now, at last, you draw near the gate. The walls of Athens rise before you in the night, not vast in the way later cities will learn to impress the eye, but solid, watchful, and quietly certain of their place in the world. This is the Dipylon, the great gate to the northwest, where roads from the countryside and from farther lands alike narrow themselves and enter the city. By day it is busy with movement, with carts, with animals, with travelers, with farmers bringing produce, with men arriving on errands of trade or politics or law. But now, beneath the calm of night, it feels less like a passage of noise and more like a threshold of memory. You slow your steps. Outside the walls, the tombs of notable families stand in the darkness, their markers pale where moonlight finds them. Even here, before the city properly begins, Athens speaks to you of ancestry. It tells you, without raising its voice, that names matter, that households matter, that the dead are not fully absent from the life of the living. Long before any public speech in the Agora, long before any reformer gathers support, family and memory wait at the gate. The road beneath you is rutted and familiar from use, and the earth still holds the shape of those who've passed this way earlier in the day. You can imagine the wheels that pressed into it, the sandals that scuffed its surface, the animals led through dust and morning light, the servants, messengers, merchants, and citizens who each carried some small burden into Athens. Now, all of that has settled into stillness. The city is quiet, though not silent. A faint movement stirs from somewhere beyond the walls, perhaps a guard shifting his weight, perhaps the soft clink of metal from a spear or belt fitting, perhaps only the natural language of a city half asleep and half alert, never entirely surrendered to rest. You lift your eyes again to the gateway, and you sense what every threshold has always held, the feeling that crossing it means entering not only another place, but another order of life. Here, outside the Dipylon, Athens still feels close to the land around it. The countryside has not yet been forgotten. The city is not so immense that it has separated itself from the fields, from the villages of Attica, from the roads that carry olives, wine, grain, and rumor inward. What happens within these walls belongs to the people beyond them as well, though not always equally and not always peacefully. That thought lingers with you, for this is still a city where noble lineages cast long shadows, where public life has not yet been entirely claimed by the broader body of citizens, where old loyalties can still shape new events. The tombs near the gate seem to say as much. They remind you that Athens is not born fresh each morning. It is carried forward by the living, but also by the remembered weight of those who came before. You stand for a moment in the cool air, with the gate before you and the graves behind you, and you feel yourself poised between two kinds of inheritance. One is old, familial, and deeply rooted. The other is not yet clear, but it is coming. Faint as the first thought before speech, faint as morning before light. Then quietly, you pass on. Once you have passed the gate, The city receives you not with ceremony, but with labor left resting. This is the Ceramicus, a quarter of potters and workshops where clay has long been shaped by human hands into jars, bowls, craters, lamps, and grave vessels that travel far beyond the bounds of Attica. By day, the district is busy with craft, with heat, with voices, with a practical rhythm of making. But now, in the night, that energy is quieted, and what remains is the gentler presence of work completed, and work waiting to begin again. You move slowly among the dark outlines of workshops. Somewhere nearby, a kiln still holds a little warmth from the day's firing. The scent of baked clay lingers in the air, dry and faintly dusty, mixed with ash, with old smoke, and with the earthiness of damp ground in shaded places. Stacked vessels wait in silence. Broken shards lie off to one side where they have been discarded. A half-finished world of use and beauty rests around you, unseen and full, but felt on fragments. You do not need to see every object clearly to know what this place is. Athens, even now, is already more connected to distant shores than the quiet night might suggest. The pottery made here can travel where the potter himself may never go, crossing the Aegean, reaching islands and coastal cities, carrying with it the touch of Athenian hands and the habits of Athenian life. Long before Athens becomes famous for empire or philosophy or drama, it is known in part through things like these, shaped in humble quarters, fired in ordinary kilns, and lifted onto ships by men whose names history will not keep. That thought settles softly beside you. Great families may speak most loudly of ancestry and land, of honor and influence, of old bloodlines and public standing. Yet a city is also held together by hands that work, by those who shape clay, mend leather, hammer metal, carry goods, tend animals, and rise each day to tasks that never become glorious. Here in the Ceramicus, Athens feels practical, patient, and close to the ground. The night makes all labor seem gentler. You pass a yard where vessels are stacked in rows, their forms dim beneath the moon. You pass a wall that still seems to remember the heat of afternoon. You pass spaces where the day's movement has ended, though not entirely disappeared. A dog shifts in the shadows. A faint ember glows and then softens. Somewhere, from deeper within the city, a voice rises and fades again. And as you walk, you begin to understand that whatever changes may soon come to Athens will not belong only to men who speak in public places. Change will reach here as well, into neighborhoods of craft and trade, into the lives of those whose work sustains the city even when their names are absent from its proudest stories. A reform in the city's order is never only an idea. It is a change in who is heard, who is counted, who is protected, and who must bear the cost when powerful men contend with one another. Even in the quiet of the Ceramicus, that truth is present. Though it does not disturb the stillness, it simply rests there like warmth in the kiln after the flame has gone down. So you continue on, between workshops and shadowed yards, through the sleeping quarter of makers, and the city feels broader to you now than it did at the gate. Not only a city of families, not only a city of sacred claims, but a city of craft, exchange, and ordinary endurance, held together through the night by things made carefully and meant to last. From the Ceramicus, you continue inward, leaving behind the resting workshops, and entering the narrower ways that lead toward the heart of the city. Here the streets do not unfold in straight lines. They bend gently. They narrow without warning. They open for a moment and then close again between walls of earth and stone. Athens in this age does not present itself in broad avenues or measured order. It gathers itself in turns, in corners, in small passages shaped by long habit rather than by grand design. And so, you follow the path slowly, letting the city reveal itself one quiet angle at a time. On either side of you stand houses that say little to the street. Their outer walls are plain, their doors closed, their inner courtyards hidden from view. Behind them, families sleep. Lamps burn low, embers fade, and the ordinary life of the city folds itself into darkness. You imagine water jars set beside walls, woven mats laid out in inner rooms, sandals left near thresholds, and the soft breathing of those who do not know they are living in one of history's turning points. That, too, is part of the night's gentleness. Most lives are lived not at the center of public decision, but beside it. You walk on, and now and then you pass a small shrine at a corner or a crossing, modest in size, but not in meaning. A stone marker, a sacred niche, a place where the divine meets the ordinary path of the human foot. In Athens, religion is not set apart from movement. It is built into the root itself. A person walking to market, to court, to a neighbor's house, or to a public gathering passes again and again through a world watched over by gods, the spirits, and inherited acts of reverence. Even at night, these places seem present. Moonlight catches an edge of stone, a little offering bowl, sits in stillness. The silence around a shrine feels different from the silence of a wall. It has shape to it and memory. You sense that countless people before you have passed this same point, glancing toward it, acknowledging what is sacred, almost without breaking stride. Habit and devotion have become one another here. The city remains quiet, though never wholly empty. Somewhere beyond the next turn, voice murmurs, and then is gone. Somewhere a latch settles. Somewhere a sleeping animal shifts against the earth. And woven through all of it is something less audible, but no less real, the feeling that Athens listens to itself even in darkness. Rumor does not vanish at night. Thought does not vanish. The names spoken in daylight are still present, only softer now, carried behind walls, held in memory, waiting for morning. You move carefully over the uneven ground. The streets guide you forward through shadow and pale light, through the hidden, domestic life of the city, through passages where public history gives way for a time to private existence. And in that quieter space, Athens feels more intimate than before. Not only a city of gates and workshops, not only a city of politics waiting to take shape, but a city of sleeping households, of old devotions, of lives gathered inward beneath the same patient sky. At last, the streets begin to open, and you feel the city widen around you. You step into the Agora, and even at night, you can sense at once that this is no ordinary place. By daylight, this ground would be full of movement, trade, petition, argument, greeting, bargaining, waiting, and the endless exchange of words by which a city learns what it thinks of itself. But now, the open space lies under moonlight, quieter than before, holding the memory of voices that have only recently fallen still. You slow again as you enter it. The ground feels broader here. The air feels different. A city, which in the narrow streets pressed close around you, now seems to draw back and give space for thought. In the darkness, the Agora is not empty so much as resting. It is a place that has spent the day listening and speaking, and now for a few hours keeps its silence. You imagine where cellars stood with oil, wine, fish, bread, pottery, cloth, and small goods brought in from farm, shore, and workshop. You imagine men stopping in conversation, others listening from the edge, others passing through but lingering long enough to catch some rumor or complaint or hopeful report. You imagine disputes brought into the open, promises made, accusations repeated, judgments awaited, and news spreading from one small knot of listeners to another, crossing the square faster than any formal proclamation. All of that has happened here, and all of it lingers. There are places in every city where life is simply lived, and places where life is interpreted. The Agora is one of those second places. Here, Athens does not merely buy and sell. Here, it discusses itself. Here, private anxieties become public language. Here, rivalries among powerful men begin to touch the wider body of citizens. Here, the city hears its own concerns spoken aloud and learns, slowly, how large or how narrow its common life may be. You walk farther into the open ground, and the night seems to deepen rather than darken. The moon lays pale light over the space where, by day, citizens would have stood together, wary or hopeful, impatient or persuaded. It is here, more than anywhere you have yet walked, that the uncertainty of 508 BCE feels real and near. For Athens has not yet become the city later ages will celebrate as the home of democracy. That future is not yet secure. It is not even fully named. It exists only in tendencies, in gestures, in possibilities, in the slowly changing sense that the people of the city may matter in a broader way than before. That is why this place matters so much. A city often changes in speech before it changes in law. Words prepare the ground. Repeated complaints prepare it. Shared grievances prepare it. Public listening prepares it. The names of powerful men may still dominate events, and noble houses may still imagine that the city turns only around them. But once ordinary citizens begin to hear themselves addressed as something larger than scattered households, something begins to shift. The change may be slow. It may be uncertain. It may be opposed at every step. But once the public square has become the place where the city can imagine itself differently, no older order remains entirely safe from challenge. So you stand in the quiet agora and think not of noise, but of possibility. Somewhere in recent days, perhaps in recent hours, the names of Cleisthenes and Agoras have passed through this space, spoken by men who favor one side or the other, or who fear both, or who simply wish to know which way the city is leaning before committing themselves aloud. Here, those names are no longer only the concern of rival families. They begin to belong to public life. They become part of a larger question, one the city is only beginning to ask. Who speaks for Athens? Who counts within it? Who may shape its future? The square does not answer you. It keeps its calm, but it holds the question well. You move slowly through the moonlit openness, and in the hush of the agora, you can almost feel the city standing on the edge of a new language. Not yet the language of settled democracy. Not yet the confidence of a people fully aware of its own power. Only the first quieter thing before that, the sense that the city may belong to more voices than before, and that, in the stillness of the night, feels like enough. From the open ground of the agora, you continue at an unhurried pace until you come to a quieter center within the city's whiter heart, the altar of the 12 gods. Even in the night, it feels like a place of stillness. There are places that gather movement and places that gather meaning. This is both. The altar stands as a sacred center and also as a point from which distance is measured, as though the city, in all its wandering streets and rival claims and restless voices, has agreed that here, at least, there is a middle point. Here is a place from which roads may be reckoned, journeys considered, and the shape of the city imagined with a little more calm. You pause there. The night seems gentler around an altar. The silence feels more deliberate. Even the air appears to settle differently, as though the city's ordinary rests and the sacred quiet of the place have met and joined one another. You imagine those who may have come here in daylight with prayers, with anxieties, with questions they could not resolve elsewhere. You imagine men seeking refuge, citizens speaking in lower tones, travelers orienting themselves, and others simply passing by, with the comfort of knowing that every city needs some place it can call its center. Rulers rise and rulers fall. Factions contend, and names gather power and lose it, but places remain. That may be why the altar feels so calm tonight. Around it, Athens is uncertain. Families watch one another. Public talk begins to widen. The future is not secure. And yet, here is a place that does not hurry to answer the city's questions. It simply holds its position in the night, sacred and steady, asking nothing of you except that you notice it. So you stand a little while longer in that still center beneath the patient sky, and let the city gather itself quietly on this point of measure, this point of reverence, this point of rest. From the altar, you turn your steps toward the rising ground, and little by little the city begins to lift beneath you. The way upward is not sudden. It asks for patience. The path is uneven in places, worn by many feet over many years, and the stones beneath you hold the memory of daylight warmth now fading into the cooler breath of night. You walk carefully, not from fear, but from the natural instinct to move more slowly when the earth begins to rise, and the city starts to fall away behind you. As you climb, the sounds below grow softer. They do not disappear. Athens is still there, breathing in its sleep, keeping its animals, its households, its guarded thoughts, its low embers, its half-spoken plans, but distance alters them. A city heard from below is made of individual sounds. A city heard from above becomes something gentler, more blended, as though its many separate lives had been gathered into one quiet murmur beneath the stars. Ahead of you, the Acropolis rises not yet as the marble vision later centuries will celebrate, but as something old and more solemn, a sacred height shaped by reverence long before it is adorned by the monuments most people now imagine when they think of Athens. In this age, the hill is already central, already holy, already heavy with meaning. Its temples and precincts belong not to a future legend, but to the living religion of the city before you. That matters, for the Acropolis is not only a high place, it is a place from which the city understands itself. To look toward it is to think of Athena, of protection, of continuity, of sacred favor, and of the bond between land, people, and divine guardianship. Even before the grandest buildings of later centuries, the height itself carries authority. Stone, elevation, memory, and worship have joined together here for generations. You continue upward. Perhaps a wall catches the moonlight ahead of you. Perhaps a weathered surface shows traces of paint that daylight would reveal more clearly. Perhaps offerings rest in silence where hands left them hours earlier. The details come softly in the dark, never all at once. but enough to remind you that this is no empty rise of stone. It is a place thick with devotion, where ritual and identity have long met one another above the city. As you climb, you feel another truth as well, one that belongs especially to this year, this hour, this uncertain Athens. Sacred places are never only sacred. They become, in troubled times, places of claim. Whoever speaks for the city may wish to speak in the language of its gods. Whoever says he defends Athens may wish also to seem the defender of Athena's own height. Piety and politics do not live far apart here. They share the same air, the same stone, the same watchfulness, yet the night softens even that thought. Nothing here feels harsh. Nothing hurries you. The climb is slow, steady, and full of room for silence. You need not resolve the city's tensions. You need only notice how naturally they gather beneath sacred forms, how easily a people's love for its gods can also become part of its public life, part of the way it justifies, explains, and imagines itself. You pause for a moment and look back. Below you lies Athens, smaller now than it seemed from the inward streets, more unified, less divided into gate and workshop and market and shrine. From here, the city begins to gather into a single shape. Roof lines rest in darkness. Lanes fade into one another. Open ground appears calmer. The scattered life you walk through below now feels held together by the hill on which you stand, and beyond the city, Attica stretches into night. The roads that feed Athens, the countryside that sustains it, the farms and villages and sacred places beyond the walls all seem, from this height, to belong to one breathing landscape. Athens is important, yes, it is proud, yes, it is restless, uncertain, and full of becoming. But it is not yet an empire, it is not yet a world city of marble certainty. It is a high place above a smaller settlement and the land that surrounds it, a people still discovering how large their shared life may become. That thought stays with you as you climb the last part of the way. The Acropolis does not merely stand above Athens. It gathers the city upward into meaning. It reminds those below that their arguments, their markets, their rivalries, and their hopes all unfold under the gaze of something older than any one man's ambition. And in a year like 508 BCE, when the shape of public life is not yet settled, that reminder feels especially quiet and especially deep. So you keep ascending, step by careful step, into the sacred height above the sleeping city. Now you have reached the height, and for a little while you simply stand still. Below you, Athens lies under the night like a gathering of low shadows and pale edges, a city small enough to be held in one long gaze, and yet large enough to contain many lives, many loyalties, many fears, and many hopes, not yet spoken plainly in daylight. From here, the streets through which you have walked are no longer a maze of turns and walls. They soften into a pattern. The Agora rests in quiet openness. The houses gather closely together. The roads move outward into Attica like dark threads disappearing into the land. The air is cooler here. A gentle wind moves across the height and touches your face with the calm of open ground above the city. It carries fewer of the sense of daily life now. Less clay, less smoke, less dust stirred by passing feet. Instead, there is the cleaner feeling of elevation, the sense that you have stepped into a place where the world below becomes easier to contemplate, not because it has become simpler, but because distance has given it a kind of mercy. You look outward. In one direction lie the roads that connect Athens to its countryside, the paths by which olive oil, wine, figs, animals, timber, and news enter the city. In another lies the way toward the older harbor at Phaleron, where sea and land continue their long exchange of goods, stories, and strangers. Beyond the immediate settlement rise the darker folds of the surrounding hills, holding the city in a quiet embrace. The land of Attica, even at night, feels close to Athens and necessary to it. The city is not separate from that land. It depends on it, speaks for it, draws strength from it, and is shaped by it in return. That is easier to feel from above. And yet what strikes you most is not only the landscape, but the scale of the city itself. Athens, as you see it now, is not yet the immense presence it will become in memory. It is not yet crowned with the monuments later centuries will treat as inevitable. It is still a modest thing by comparison with its future legend, a place of stone and earth and sacred custom, of public argument and family standing, of markets and shrines and uncertain possibility. The people below do not know what history will one day call them. They do not know that later generations will look back on this city and search here for origins, for beginnings, for the first clear notes of a political music still only half heard. They do not know that this unsettled Athens, this city between forms, this place not yet sure of itself, will be remembered as more than it can presently imagine. They are not living in an introduction. They are living in their own present. That thought brings a deep quiet with it. It is easy, from a later age, to turn places like this into preludes, to imagine that everyone below is merely waiting for greatness to arrive. But the night refuses that simplification. The city before you is complete in its own hour. Its people love, sleep, argue, worship, work, worry, and hope within the limits of their own knowledge. They do not inhabit legend. They inhabit a living city whose next steps are unknown. And perhaps that is why the view feels so peaceful. Uncertainty, seen from a sacred height, is gentler than certainty seen from below. You remain there, looking over rooftops and lanes, over dark ground and pale stone, over the roads that lead outward and the sanctuaries that draw the city inward again. Athens rests beneath you, not silent, but softened. Its rivalries are hidden by distance. Its ambitions are quieted by the hour. Its future is folded into the stillness of the land. For now, nothing is decided. For now, the city is only itself beneath the stars. And that is enough for this moment on the sacred height above the sleeping world below. When at last you turn from the sacred height and begin to descend, your path leads you toward another rocky place, quieter in its way, though marked by a different kind of presence. This is the Areopagus. Even in darkness it feels austere. Its stone does not invite lingering in quite the same manner as the open space of the Agora, nor does it lift the spirit in the same way as the Acropolis above. Instead, it seems to gather thought into something firmer and older. Here, the city feels less like a place of becoming, and more like a place of memory, judgment, and endurance. You approach slowly. The rock underfoot is uneven, worn by time and weather, and the shape of the hill seems to hold itself apart from the softer life below. In daylight, men would know this place as one bound to old authority, to ancient seriousness, to the kind of civic weight that does not need to raise its voice in order to be felt. Even now at night, that character remains. Some places in a city are full of exchange. Some are full of aspiration. This one is full of gravity. You stand for a moment and let the stillness of the place settle around you. Here, the older order of Athens feels near. Not only the order of noble families and inherited influence, but the deeper sense that law, memory, and restraint must outlast the noise of passing disputes. The Areopagus carries with it the dignity of institutions that are older than any single political moment, older than any one reforming ambition, older than the names now moving through the city's restless talk. That, too, is part of Athens. For a city does not become new all at once. Even when it begins to imagine a broader public life, even when more voices start to gather in its open places, the older centers of authority do not simply vanish. They remain. They watch. They lend weight to habit, caution, and inherited forms. They remind the living that not everything can be remade in a single generation. And so, standing near the Areopagus in the cool night, you feel the balance more clearly than before. Below and beyond lies the city of markets, workshops, households, shrines, and widening speech. Here is the city of old judgment. Neither is wholly separate from the other. Athens in this year belongs to both. The night softens that truth, but it does not erase it. A rock remains firm beneath the moon, holding its silence, holding its authority, holding the long memory of a city not yet ready to leave its older self behind, even as it slowly turns toward something new. From the Areopagus, you continue westward, and the ground opens once more beneath the night sky. Here, the city feels less enclosed. The air moves more freely across the hillside, and the dark shape of the land seems to wait in a different way than the market or the sacred height or the older rock of judgment. Nothing here demands your attention through monument or wall. Nothing interrupts you with grandeur. And yet the place feels important, as though the earth itself were holding room for something not yet fully formed. You stand upon a slope that later generations will know more clearly than the people of this night can know it now. In years to come, this hillside will be associated with the gathered voice of the citizen body, with the place where men of Athens meet in assembly, where public decisions are shaped not only by the influence of noble families, but by the speaking and hearing of a wider civic world. But tonight, in 508 BCE, that future is still only a possibility, quiet as the wind moving over the rise of the ground. That is what makes this place so moving. You are not standing in certainty. You are standing in possibility. The hill says nothing, and yet it waits. Around you, the city remains what it has been, a place of households, shrines, workshops, roads, and public spaces where speech travels farther than the speaker intends. The old powers have not vanished. The weight of lineage still matters. Men of standard still contend for influence. Sacred custom still frames public life. The habits of older rule still live in the city's bones. And yet here, beneath the open night, you can feel another idea beginning to take shape. A city becomes something new when it decides who may gather, who may listen, who may speak, and where that speaking will matter. That change does not happen all at once. It begins in murmurs, in invitations, in appeals, in the gradual widening of the word we. It begins when men who were once expected only to follow begin to understand themselves as part of the city's active voice. It begins when public space ceases to belong only to power and starts to belong, however imperfectly, to participation. The hillside before you seems made for that thought. Open to the sky, open to breath, open to the possibility that silence itself may be waiting to become speech. You think again of the names already moving through Athens, Cleisthenes, Isagoras, the great families, the shifting loyalties, the uncertainty that hangs over the city like the darkness before dawn. Each name still matters. Each choice still matters. But from here, those rivalries seem smaller than the larger question that is beginning to gather beneath them. What will Athens allow itself to become? Not what one man wants, not what one household claims, but what shape the city may take when more of its people begin to imagine that they belong within its decisions. That is the deeper stillness of this place. Even silence can be the beginning of a city's new language. You remain for a while on the hillside, letting the wind move around you, letting the open ground quiet your thoughts. There is no crowd here tonight, no raised voice, no decree, no formal assembly to make the future visible. There is only the land, the dark sky, the sleeping city nearby, and the faint but unmistakable sense that Athens stands near the edge of a different understanding of itself. It does not yet know the full meaning of that change. Neither do the men below, sleeping in their houses, arguing in private, weighing risks, fearing rivals, trusting the gods, and waking each day into a city whose foundations are shifting almost without sound. But the hillside knows how to wait, and so you stand there a little longer in the mild night above the city in a place not yet fully claimed by history, and you feel how gently the future sometimes arrives, not with triumph, but with room. Room to gather, room to listen, room to speak, a room for a people to become larger in their own understanding than they had once been. At last, you turn away from the open hillside and begin the slow descent back toward the city, carrying with you the calm of height, the silence of stone, and the quiet knowledge that Athens, on this night in 508 BCE, remains unfinished the most human way. The ground leads you downward gently. Behind you lies the place of possibility, the waiting slope, where future voices seem almost to rest in the darkness before they are called forth. Nearby, still holding its old gravity, remains the Areopagus, the rock of judgment and memory, where older Athens keeps watch over itself. Above and behind all of it rises the Acropolis, sacred and still, gathering the city beneath the gates of Athena and the long endurance of worship. And below, spread once more before you, lies the sleeping body of the city itself. You walk back toward it without haste. Now the landmarks of your journey begin to return, but softened, as though the night has gently folded them into memory. The broad openness of the Agora seems quieter than before, not because it has lost its meaning, but because you now know how much it holds. By day, it will again receive footsteps, traders, petitions, arguments, rumors, laughter, anxieties, and public speech. But tonight it rests, and you pass it with a deeper understanding of the way a city can change in conversation long before it changes in stone. Not far from it, the altar of the 12 gods remains at its calm center, measuring distance, holding reverence, offering stillness in a city not yet certain of itself. Even now, without pausing there again, you feel its presence, the way one remembers the location of a fire long after leaving its warmth. You continue into the inward streets, The walls close around you once more, the roads bend, the shrines return at corners and crossings, small and patient beneath the moon. Houses remain shut to the street, their courtyards hidden, their families asleep, their lamps dimmed, their daily concerns suspended for a few more hours. In the mercy of darkness, you pass them quietly, and you think again how little most people know in any age of the large names and turning moments through which they are living. They sleep, they work, they worship, they worry over household things, and history, without asking them, gathers around their lives all the same. Farther on, the Ceramicus receives you once more with its silence of labor. The kilns are low, the clay rests. The hands that shaped vessels by daylight are still now, and the quarter of maker seems content to let the night preserve what the day produced. You breathe again the faint scent of ash and earth, and it seems to you that no city is ever shaped only by those who lead it. It is also shaped by those who build, fire, lift, mend, and endure. The future of Athens, whatever it becomes, will pass through hands like theirs as surely as through the mouth of statesmen. And then ahead, the Dipylon waits again. The gate that first received you now stands as the final threshold of your walk, dark and steady, with the tombs of old families still nearby in the moonlight. The dead remain where they were. The ancestral city remains what it was. And yet, you have walked far enough through Athens to feel that another city is stirring inside the first, not replacing it entirely, not sweeping it away in a single moment, but slowly, quietly, now beginning to imagine a broader life. That is the meaning of this night. Athens in 508 BCE is not yet a city of certainty. It is not yet the polished symbol later generations will praise, study, imitate, or mourn. It is still rough at the edges, still divided by lineage and ambition, still held by sacred custom and older authority, still learning how far public speech may reach. And because of that, it feels alive in a deeper sense. It is becoming. You pause once more in the cool darkness. Behind you is the city. Above it, the sacred height. Beside it, the patient hills. Within it, the sleeping houses, the quiet shrines, the resting workshops, the empty market, the altar at the center, the names not yet settled into history, the people not yet aware of how much their world is changing. The night keeps all of it gently, and now, as your walk comes toward its end, you let the politics dissolve back into air and distance. You let the arguments fade into silence. You let the city become once more what it first was when you approached it. A dark shape beneath the stars, breathing softly in its sleep, holding within itself both memory and possibility. And in that stillness, Athens waits for morning. And now the walk is over. Athens remains behind you and around you, quiet beneath the stars, its walls and shrines and stones resting in the cool darkness before dawn. The gate is still, the kilns are still, the market is still, the sacred height keeps watch above the sleeping city, and the hills beyond hold their silence as they have for generations. Nothing more is needed from this night. You have walked through a city not yet certain of its future, and that uncertainty has rested softly in the air, like wind moving over stone, like breath in sleep, like the first faint thought of morning before the light appears. So you leave Athens gently, as you found it, quietly, slowly, and below the dark sacred hill and beyond the quiet gate, the city sleeps on, not yet knowing what name history will one day give it.